The morning sun rose over the small human colony on Helios 9. Aaron Wright woke up early, as he always did. He was 17, tall for his age, with dark hair that always seemed to fall into his eyes. His room was filled with specimen jars, data, pads, and hand-drawn pictures of alien plants and animals. Aaron looked out his window at the rolling hills beyond the colony's edge. The air on Helios 9 had a slight purple tint when the sun hit it just right. He loved that about this planet. "Aaron!" "Breakfast," his mother's voice called from downstairs. Eleanor Wright stood in their small kitchen making pancakes. At first glance, she looked like any other mother in the colony. Her light brown hair pulled back, wearing simple clothes, smiling as her son came down the stairs. But if anyone looked closely at her eyes, they might see something different. Something hard, something that had seen terrible things. "Morning, Mom," Aaron said, sliding into his seat at the table. "Did you sign my permission form? The science class is going to the Eastern Valley today to collect samples." Eleanor put a plate of pancakes in front of him. "I signed it, but remember the rules." Aaron nodded, mouth already full. "Stay with the group. Don't go past the marked boundaries. Be back before sunset." "And?" Eleanor pressed. Aaron sighed. "And if I see any Xanthari officials, be polite and follow their instructions." Eleanor sat across from him. To Aaron, she was just his somewhat overprotective mother who used to work as a diplomat before retiring to this quiet colony world. He had no idea that she was General Eleanor Wright, the most feared human military commander in the galaxy. The woman who had forced the mighty Xanthari Empire to the negotiating table not once but 3 times. The peace between humans and the Xanthari was fragile. The Empire controlled most of the galaxy and saw humans as dangerous upstarts. Eleanor had hidden her true identity when she moved to Helios 9 with Aaron 5 years ago. She wanted to give her son a normal life, away from war and politics. "Will you be home for dinner?" Eleanor asked. "Should be, unless we find something really interesting." Aaron's eyes lit up. "Ms. Harris thinks we might find new fungal species in the caves. I've been reading about xenomycology all week." Eleanor smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just be careful in those caves, okay?" Aaron rolled his eyes. "Mom, I'll be fine. I'm not a little kid anymore." After breakfast, Aaron grabbed his collection kit and headed to the colony school. Eleanor watched him go from the doorway. When he was out of sight, she closed the door and pressed her palm against a hidden scanner in the hallway wall. A small panel slid open, revealing a secure communication device. She checked for messages from her network of former officers who kept her informed about Xanthari movements. There was one new alert. A Xanthari inspection vessel had entered orbit around Helios 9 that morning. Routine, probably, but Eleanor felt uneasy. The science class set out after lunch, 20 students in all, led by their teacher, Ms. Harris. They took a shuttle to the Eastern Valley, famous for its unusual rock formations and diverse ecosystem. Aaron could barely contain his excitement. "Remember, stay within the green markers," Ms. Harris instructed as they unloaded their equipment. "Anyone who goes beyond them automatically fails the assignment." The students spread out. Aaron found a spot near a small cave entrance where moisture had created the perfect environment for several species of fungi. He carefully took samples, recording everything in his data pad. He was so focused on a particularly interesting blue speckled fungus that he didn't notice how close he had gotten to the boundary marker. When he looked up, he realized he was just a few feet from the green post that marked the limit of their exploration zone. Just beyond it, he spotted something that made his heart race, a fungus, unlike any he had seen before. It glowed faintly, even in the daylight, its cap pulsing slightly as if breathing. Aaron looked around. No one was watching. He stepped past the marker just for a minute, he told himself. He needed to get a sample of this new species. He didn't know that the restricted area began just 50 meters beyond the colony's markers, or that a Xanthari patrol had landed for a routine inspection of this sector. Aaron was carefully collecting his sample when a harsh voice cut through the air. "Human, you are in a restricted area." Aaron jumped and turned to see 3 Xanthari soldiers standing behind him. Their scaled skin had a bluish tint, and their four eyes blinked independently as they assessed him. The leader, with ornate markings on his uniform that Aaron didn't understand, stepped forward. "I'm sorry," Aaron said quickly. "I didn't realize. I'm with the school group. We're just collecting samples for science class." Commander Vexril studied, the human boy with distaste. Vexril had fought against humans in the last conflict. He had lost 2 clutch brothers to human weapons. The peace treaty was, in his mind, a mistake. "What are you collecting?" Vexril demanded, pointing at Aaron's sample case. "Just fungi. Look." Aaron opened his case, showing the carefully labeled specimens. "It's for biology class. I'm going to be a xenobiologist someday." Vexril's upper left eye twitched. "Or you are collecting biological data for military purposes." Aaron laughed, which was the wrong response. "Military? I'm just a student." "You will come with us for questioning," Vexril decided, motioning to his soldiers. Fear washed over Aaron. "Wait, I need to tell my teacher where I'm going. She'll worry." "Move," Vexril ordered, reaching for Aaron's arm. Aaron stepped back instinctively. "Please just let me tell my group my mom will be worried sick if I disappear." "Your mother?" Something in Vexril's posture changed. "Who is your mother, human?" "Eleanor, right? She used to be a diplomat, now she just lives here with me." "Please." She'll explain everything. The name meant nothing to Vexril. The Xanthari had never seen General Wright's face, only heard her voice in transmissions during the wars. They knew her reputation, but not that she had a son, or that she lived on this quiet colony world. "Last warning. Come now or face consequences," Vexril said. Aaron, panicking now, turned to run back toward his class. He had to find Ms. Harris, tell her what was happening. He never made it. The sound of energy weapons discharging cut through the air. Aaron felt a burning sensation in his back. Then nothing. Eleanor was working in her garden when she felt it. A mother's instinct, perhaps, or something deeper. She stood up suddenly, soil falling from her hands. By the time she reached the eastern valley, alarms were already sounding throughout the colony. Students were crying. Ms. Harris was trying desperately to reach someone on her communicator. And there, on the ground just beyond the green marker, lay Aaron, not moving, not breathing. Eleanor fell to her knees beside him. Too late. Far too late, as she held her son's body. A Xanthari ship rose into the atmosphere above them. Commander Vexril stood at the viewscreen, looking down at the colony. "Report the incident as a security response to a human spy," he told his communications officer. The boy was in a restricted area, collecting sensitive biological data. The officer hesitated. "Sir, he was just a student. He was human," Vexril said flatly. "Set course back to Central Command." As the ship disappeared into the clouds, Eleanor Wright looked up, her face transformed by grief and rage. The mask of the quiet colony mother fell away completely. In its place was the face that had haunted Xanthari commanders' nightmares for years. The general had returned. 3 weeks after Aaron's death, the Xanthari military outpost on Drixus 4 went silent. No distress signals, no communications, nothing. The Xanthari Empire sent an investigation team to find out what happened. What they discovered shook the confidence of the Imperial High Command. The outpost was empty. All 2,000 personnel had vanished. There were no signs of battle, no blood, no evidence of violence. The systems were operational. Food remained on tables, half-eaten. It was as if everyone had simply disappeared in the middle of their daily routines. The only thing out of place was a single object in the commander's quarters, a small silver pin in the shape of a 5-pointed star, the insignia of a human alliance general. The investigation team reported their findings directly to the Imperial Palace. The Emperor summoned his war council immediately. "How is this possible?" demanded the Emperor, his 4 eyes blinking in agitation. 2,000 soldiers don't simply vanish." Grand Admiral Zeltorn, Supreme Commander of the Xanthari military forces, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we believe this was a human operation." "Humans? They don't have the technology to do this," the Emperor said. Zeltorn brought up a holographic display. New intelligence suggests otherwise. The pin found at the scene belongs to General Eleanor Wright. The Emperor stared at the image of the pin. Wright, why do I know that name? Zeltorn's skin paled slightly, a sign of discomfort in Xanthari physiology. She commanded human forces in the last 3 conflicts. She was their most effective strategist. She is the reason we sought peace terms rather than continuing the last war. The Emperor's upper eyes narrowed. And where has this General Wright been during the peace? Unknown, Your Majesty. Our intelligence lost track of her 5 years ago. She was believed to be retired. Intelligence Minister Clarok joined the conversation. Sire, we have just received an update from Helios 9 colony. A human boy was killed there 3 weeks ago during a routine inspection. His name was Aaron Wright. The connection formed instantly. The Emperor rose from his throne. Find Commander Vexril. Now. Meanwhile, far from the Imperial Palace, Eleanor's team had completed their first mission perfectly. The Xanthari personnel from Drixus 4 were now being held in a secret facility deep in an asteroid field. None had been harmed. They were simply removed. Eleanor stood in the command center of Point Omega, watching as reports of the Xanthari reaction came in. Colonel Gallagher approached with a datapad. They're scrambling ships to protect key installations, he said. Just as you predicted. Eleanor nodded. They're thinking defensively, spreading their forces thin. Good. She turned to her team. Phase 1 complete. Begin Phase 2. Captain Diaz stepped forward. All units are in position, General. Execute. Across Xanthari space, a coordinated series of strikes began. Unlike the operation at Drixus 4, these were not stealth missions. These were meant to be seen. A fuel processing facility on Krathos Prime exploded in a tremendous fireball. A communications relay in the Varric system went dark. 3 supply ships disappeared from their routes. A weapons development laboratory on Theros 2 found itself suddenly exposed to vacuum when its environmental systems failed. None of these attacks claimed Xanthari lives. Evacuation warnings were sent before each strike, but the message was clear. The humans could hit anywhere at any time. Back on Point Omega, Eleanor received the reports with calm satisfaction. She had spent 5 years living as a civilian, trying to forget the general she had been. But it all came back so easily. The strategic thinking, the ability to coordinate complex operations, the cold calculations of war. General Alan Chen called from his station. We're picking up a transmission from the Imperial Palace. It's being broadcast on all frequencies. Let's hear it, Eleanor said. The voice of the Emperor filled the command center. This is Emperor Zontil of the Xanthari Empire. I speak directly to General Eleanor Wright of the Human Alliance. We acknowledge your grief and anger over the death of your son. We offer formal apologies and reparations. We request immediate cessation of hostilities and the return of our personnel from Drixus 4. Eleanor laughed, a sound without humor. They think this is about reparations. She nodded to Chen. Send our response. Throughout Xanthari space, on every communication device, the Emperor's message was suddenly replaced by a new transmission. The face of Eleanor Wright appeared on screens everywhere. People of the Xanthari Empire. I am General Eleanor Wright. 3 weeks ago, your forces killed my son, Aaron Wright, on Helios 9. He was 17 years old. He was collecting mushroom samples for his school project. For this, Commander Vexril ordered his execution. Her face showed no emotion, which somehow made her words more powerful. Your Emperor offers apologies and reparations, as if credits could replace my child, as if words could wash away his blood. This is not about reparations. This is about justice. This is about consequences. She leaned closer to the camera. You took my son from me. Now I will take everything from you. Not your lives. I am not Vexril. But your power, your comfort, your sense of security, those are mine to take. The transmission cut off, leaving billions of Xanthari citizens in stunned silence. In the Imperial Palace, Emperor Zontil turned to his advisors. Find me everything about this woman, every record, every battle, every weakness. Admiral Zeltorn cleared his throat. Sire, there is something you should see. He brought up a classified military file. This is the report from the Third Border Conflict. Wright was commanding a human fleet outnumbered 3-1 by our forces. The Emperor studied the battle data. His eyes widened as he watched the human ships execute a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible, splitting the Xanthari fleet and picking it apart piece by piece. How did we not know who she was? The Emperor whispered. She has been living as a civilian on Helios 9, said Intelligence Minister Clarok. Our records show her registered as a former diplomat. There was nothing to connect her to General Wright. The Emperor's fist slammed down on the table. Find Vexril and mobilize the fleet, all of it. As Xanthari ships began moving throughout the Empire, Eleanor watched from Point Omega. This was exactly what she wanted. The more they moved, the more vulnerable they became. They're responding exactly as expected, Gallagher observed. Eleanor nodded. The Emperor is old-school military. He thinks in terms of fleets and battles. He doesn't understand the war we're fighting. She turned to her team. Prepare for Phase 3, and get me a direct line to Admiral Vexril. It's time he and I had a conversation. Eleanor sat alone in her house that night. Aaron's room remained untouched. His collection kit had been returned to her, still spattered with his blood. She held it in her hands, turning it over slowly. A simple wooden box. Inside, neat rows of sample containers, each labeled in Aaron's careful handwriting. The last one read, Unknown luminescent fungus, possible new species. For that, they had killed him. The colony administrator had visited earlier, offering condolences and explanations. The Xanthari had filed an official report claiming Aaron was in a restricted area, had resisted questioning, and was shot while attempting to flee with sensitive biological materials. They had offered token compensation, as if credits could replace a child. Eleanor had said nothing during this visit. She simply stared at the administrator until he became uncomfortable and left. Now, in the darkness of her home, Eleanor finally moved. She went to her bedroom and pushed aside the heavy dresser with surprising strength. Beneath it was a small section of flooring that looked no different from the rest. She pressed her palm against it, and a hidden scanner read her fingerprints and DNA. The floor panel slid away, revealing a small compartment. Inside was a quantum-encrypted communication device, a uniform folded with military precision, and a small metal case. Eleanor took out the communication device first. She activated it and entered a complex series of codes from memory. The device, connected to a secure network that officially didn't exist. Authorization, Wright Eleanor A. General, 5th Fleet. Code sequence, Sword Whisper Awakening 9. The device blinked green. A voice prompt requested her message. Message begins. 2. Colonel Richard Gallagher. The sword is unsheathed. Rendezvous at Point Omega. Bring the old team. Message ends. Next, she opened the metal case. Inside was a small silver pin, the insignia of a human alliance general. She had not worn it in 5 years. Eleanor affixed it to her civilian clothes. Finally, she took out the uniform, dark blue with silver trim, designed for combat and command. She changed into it slowly, methodically, like a ritual. With each piece, more of the mother fell away, and more of the general emerged. By morning, she was gone. The only thing left in the house was a hollow image of Aaron on the kitchen table. Across human space, a network awakened. On New Terra, Colonel Richard Gallagher was teaching cadets at the military academy when his personal communicator vibrated with a specific pattern. He excused himself immediately, canceled all his classes for the foreseeable future, and was on a transport within the hour. On the mining colony of Vega Prime, former Special Operations Captain Samantha Diaz received a message while inspecting ore processors. She read it once, deleted it, and informed her assistant she would be taking a long overdue vacation. On the luxury world of Paradiso, weapons developer Alan Chen was enjoying retirement when the message arrived. He opened a hidden room in his beach house and began packing advanced prototypes that had never been officially approved. 12 ships changed course across the sector. 28 military officers requested immediate leave. 16 weapons caches were accessed for the first time in years. The Xanthari noticed none of this. They were too large, too confident in their dominance of the galaxy to pay attention to the movements of individual humans or small ships. Even their sophisticated monitoring systems saw nothing unusual. Each movement was disguised as routine civilian traffic. 3 days after Aaron's death, Eleanor arrived at an unmarked space station hidden in an asteroid field near the edge of human territory. It had no official name, only a designation, Point Omega. Colonel Gallagher was waiting when her small transport docked. He stood straight, saluting as she emerged. Eleanor returned the salute, then embraced her old friend briefly. "I wished never to see you in that uniform again," Gallagher said quietly. "Not under these circumstances." "They killed my son, Richard," Eleanor said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "For picking a mushroom." Gallagher nodded. "I know. The team is assembled in the command center. Everyone came." They walked through the station's corridors. This facility had been mothballed years ago but maintained in secret. Dust covered some surfaces, but all systems were operational. They passed crew quarters where officers were setting up equipment and reviewing data. The command center was a large room dominated by a holographic display of the sector. Around it stood 12 men and women in unmarked uniforms. They all came to attention when Eleanor entered. "At ease," she said, taking position at the main console. "Thank you all for coming." "For you, General." "Always," said Captain Diaz. "We're sorry about Aaron." Eleanor nodded once, acknowledging the sentiment, but unable to dwell on it, she activated the main display. "The Xanthari have forgotten who we are," she said. "They believe the peace made us soft, compliant. They believe they can kill our children without consequence." She brought up an image of Commander Vexril, taken from colony security footage. "This is the Xanthari officer who ordered my son's death. Commander Vexril of the Imperial Enforcement Division. I want everything we have on him." Alan Chen stepped forward with a data pad. "Already compiled, General. Vexril is from the southern continent of the Xanthari homeworld. Prestigious family. 3 previous combat commands against human forces. Currently assigned to oversee the Outer Rim colonies, including Helios 9. Eleanor studied the information. Family connections in the Imperial Court, access to sensitive intelligence, and a documented history of anti-human sentiment. Interesting. "What are you thinking, General?" Gallagher asked. Eleanor looked around at her team, these people who had followed her through the darkest days of the conflicts with the Xanthari. "I'm thinking it's time the Empire learned a lesson. Not through direct confrontation, they still outnumber us, but through strategic operations. We will dismantle their power structures piece by piece until they have no choice but to acknowledge what they've done." She brought up a map of Xanthari space, highlighting key military installations, supply routes, and command centers. "Our first target will be here," she said, indicating a military outpost on a moon called Drixus 4. "It's their primary communications relay for the entire Outer Rim. More importantly, it's where Vexril files his reports and receives his orders." Captain Diaz studied the defenses. "It's heavily guarded, General. 2,000 troops, automated defense systems, orbital weapons platforms." Eleanor smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Yes, and we're going to take it without firing a shot." She pulled up the station's schematics. 3 years ago, when I was still in uniform, I negotiated the terms of our withdrawal from the Drixus system. During those negotiations, I made sure to memorize every detail of their outpost, including this. She highlighted a maintenance tunnel that ran beneath the primary power grid. Officially, this access point was sealed after an accident 2 years ago. Unofficially, it remains operational for emergency repairs. Their security protocols are updated every 6 months. The last update Was 5 months ago. The team leaned in, studying the approach. We'll need stealth transport, Gallagher said. Already arranged, Eleanor replied. And I want a special package prepared. When we're done, I want every Xanthari in the Empire to know exactly who they're dealing with. As the team dispersed to prepare, Eleanor stayed at the console, staring at Vexril's image. You should have checked who my son's mother was, she whispered, before you decided to kill him. 3 months after Aaron's death, the Xanthari Empire was falling apart, not from the outside but from within. Eleanor's strategy was working perfectly. Rather than engaging in direct battles where the superior numbers of the Xanthari could overwhelm human forces, she targeted their infrastructure: fuel depots, communication networks, supply chains, manufacturing facilities. With each passing week, more Xanthari worlds faced shortages of basic goods. Military ships couldn't get the fuel they needed. Orders from the Imperial Palace took days to reach outer systems instead of minutes. Eleanor sat in her command chair on Point Omega, reviewing the latest intelligence reports. Colonel Gallagher stood beside her. The Xanthari Fourth Fleet is stranded in the Paraxis system, he said. They're out of fuel and low on supplies. Eleanor nodded. And Admiral Vexril, promoted to Fleet Admiral. He's leading the effort to find us. Currently, his command ship is in orbit around his homeworld, Xanthus Prime. He's gathered his personal battle group there for protection. A slight smile crossed Eleanor's face. Exactly as expected. He fears I'll come for him directly. Will you? Gallagher asked. Eleanor stood up and walked to the main display, showing the current position of various Xanthari forces. Not in the way he expects. She turned to Captain Diaz. Is the package ready? Diaz nodded. Yes, General. The data has been compiled and formatted as requested. Good. Begin Phase 3. Throughout human space, seemingly ordinary transport ships changed course. These vessels, disguised as merchant craft, were actually carrying advanced communication equipment. They positioned themselves at key points near major Xanthari population centers. Meanwhile, Admiral Vexril paced the bridge of his command ship. The massive vessel orbited Xanthus Prime, surrounded by a dozen other warships. Vexril had barely slept in weeks. Every shadow made him jump. Every unexpected noise caused him to reach for his weapon. Status report, he barked at his second-in-command. No, change, Admiral. All defense systems at maximum. No sign of human vessels in the system. Vexril nodded tensely. He had expected Wright to come for him personally after what happened to her son. Each day that passed without an attack only increased his paranoia. She's planning something, he muttered. Something we're not seeing. On Point Omega, Eleanor gave the final order. Activate the transmitters. Across Xanthari space, the disguised human ships powered up their communication equipment. They began broadcasting on all frequencies, overriding the Imperial communication network. Every screen, every datapad, every communication device in the Empire suddenly showed the same images. It began with Aaron Wright, smiling in his school uniform, holding a specimen container with a strange fungus inside. Then the footage shifted to security cameras from Helios 9, showing Aaron collecting samples near the cave. It continued with Vexril's confrontation with the boy, captured from multiple angles, and then in crystal clear detail, it showed Vexril giving the order to fire, and Aaron falling to the ground. But the transmission didn't stop there. It continued, with other footage collected over years. Xanthari soldiers mistreating human colonists, Imperial officials seizing human property without compensation, secret recordings of Xanthari leaders discussing ways to undermine the peace treaty. On billions of screens throughout the Empire, ordinary Xanthari citizens saw the truth of how their government had been treating humans. Many had believed the official stories about dangerous human expansion and aggression. Now they saw evidence that contradicted everything they had been told. The transmission ended with Eleanor's face. People of the Xanthari Empire, you have now seen the truth. Your leaders have lied to you. They speak of peace while planning for war. They talk of justice while committing murder. My son was not the first innocent killed by your forces. But I intend to make him the last. On Xanthus Prime in the Imperial Palace, Emperor Zontil watched the broadcast with growing horror. His advisors stood in shocked silence around him. How many of our citizens have seen this, he asked finally. Intelligence Minister Clarok checked his datapad, his hands trembling. Preliminary estimates suggest 97% of all communication devices in the Empire, Your Majesty. The Emperor closed all four of his eyes. And the footage? It's authentic? No one answered. They didn't need to. Reports began coming in from across the Empire. Protests in the streets of major cities. Outer Rim worlds declaring independence from Imperial control. Military units refusing to follow orders. The carefully maintained image of the benevolent Empire was shattering. Admiral Vexril received an urgent transmission from the Emperor himself. Admiral, the situation is deteriorating rapidly. You will deploy the Sunfire weapon immediately. Vexril hesitated. The Sunfire was a planet killer, developed in secret and forbidden by numerous treaties. Your Majesty, the weapon has never been tested in combat, and using it would violate— I don't care about treaties, the Emperor shouted. Find Wright's base and destroy it. That's an order. Vexril ended the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. Prepare the Sunfire for deployment. Intelligence had finally located Point Omega hidden in the asteroid field. Vexril's battle group set course immediately. On Point Omega, Eleanor received word of the approaching Xanthari fleet. They're coming in fast, reported Alan Chen. And long-range scans detect an unusual energy signature. Something big. Eleanor smiled. Right on schedule. Is everyone in position? Gallagher nodded. All ships ready, General. Then let's welcome Admiral Vexril properly. As the Xanthari fleet arrived at the coordinates of Point Omega, they found only an empty asteroid field. No station. No human ships. Nothing. Vexril slammed his fist on his command console. Scan again. They must be here. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout his ship. From behind asteroids, from hiding places where sensors couldn't detect them, human warships appeared. Not the handful of vessels Vexril had expected, but hundreds. They had been waiting, cloaked and silent. The human ships moved with precision, surrounding the Xanthari fleet in a perfect sphere formation. There was no escape. On the bridge of the lead human vessel, Eleanor stood in her full general's uniform. She opened a channel to Vexril's ship. Admiral Vexril, this is General Eleanor, right? I believe you've been looking for me. Vexril's image appeared on her screen, his scaled face pale with fear. You can't win, right? You may have surrounded us, but I have the Sunfire weapon. I can destroy this entire area, including your fleet. Eleanor's expression didn't change. You could try, but before you do, look at your tactical display. Vexril glanced down, then back up in shock. Humans had somehow boarded every ship in his fleet. They held key positions throughout each vessel. How? He began. The same way we took Drixus 4, Eleanor said. We've been studying your ship designs for years. We know every access point, every weakness. She leaned forward. Now, Admiral, you have a choice. Surrender and face justice for the murder of my son, or give the order to fire and watch as your entire fleet is taken from within. For the first time in his life, Admiral Vexril knew true fear. Admiral Vexril stared at the screen showing General Eleanor Wright. His four hands trembled slightly. Around him, his bridge officers looked to him for orders, but he had none to give. You have 1 minute to decide, Admiral, Eleanor said calmly. Vexril glanced at the tactical display again. Human forces were on every ship in his fleet. His finger hovered over the control that would activate the Sunfire weapon. One push, and this entire region would be vaporized, including his own fleet. You would die too, he said. Eleanor's expression didn't change. My son is already dead. What do I have to lose? 30 seconds passed in silence. Then Vexril lowered his hand. I surrender, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Throughout the Xanthari fleet, weapon systems powered down. Human soldiers emerged from hiding places, taking control of key systems on each ship. Eleanor nodded once. A wise choice, Admiral. You and your officers will be detained and transported to a neutral system for trial. Your crew will be returned to Xanthari. Space unharmed. Trial? Vexril asked. Under whose authority? Under the authority of the Galactic Charter, which your empire signed, Eleanor replied. The murder of civilians is a war crime in any language. As human forces secured the Xanthari fleet, news of Admiral Vexril's capture spread throughout the empire. Combined with the revelations from Eleanor's broadcast, it created a crisis the imperial government could not contain. On dozens of worlds, Xanthari citizens took to the streets, demanding answers from their leaders. Outer systems, long feeling the weight of imperial rule, declared independence. Even on the homeworld, protests grew outside the imperial palace. Emperor Zontil called an emergency meeting of his remaining advisors. How did it come to this, he demanded. One human woman has brought the empire to its knees. Intelligence Minister Claurock spoke carefully. Not just any woman, Your Majesty. We underestimated her. We underestimated all of them. What are our options? Grand Admiral Zeltorn, now the highest-ranking military officer after Vexril's capture, stepped forward. We have received a transmission from General Wright. She is offering terms. Terms? The Emperor repeated in disbelief. She dictates terms to us now. We have little choice, Your Majesty, Zeltorn said quietly. Our military is in disarray. Our citizens are in revolt. We must consider what is best for the stability of the empire. The Emperor slumped in his throne. Let me hear these terms. 1 week later, representatives from the Xanthari Empire and the Human Alliance met on neutral ground, a space station in the unclaimed territory between their borders. Eleanor sat at one end of a long table, flanked by Colonel Gallagher and Captain Diaz. Emperor Zontil sat at the other end, with Grand Admiral Zeltorn and new Intelligence Minister Trackfall beside him. The terms are simple, Eleanor said, her voice echoing in the quiet room. Independence for all human worlds, reparations for decades of mistreatment, and a complete restructuring of the empire into a federation where all species have equal representation. Emperor Zontil's upper eyes narrowed. You ask for the end of the empire as we know it. The empire as you know it is already ending, Eleanor replied. You can guide that change or be swept away by it, but make no mistake, change is coming. The negotiations continued for days. Finally, an agreement was reached. The Xanthari Empire would transform into the Galactic Federation, with elected representatives from all member worlds, including human colonies. The transition would take place over 5 years, with oversight from neutral third parties, and Admiral Vexril would stand trial for the murder of Aaron Wright. The trial took place 3 months later, in a specially constructed courtroom on Helios 9, the very planet where Aaron had died. Delegates from a dozen species attended as observers. Vexril sat alone at the defendant's table. His once proud uniform had been replaced by plain gray clothes. He looked smaller somehow, his scales dull from confinement. Eleanor sat in the front row of the gallery, watching as evidence was presented. Security footage, witness testimony. The mushroom samples found in Aaron's collection kit, harmless, ordinary fungi with no military value. When it was time for final statements, the prosecutor turned to the judges, 3 humans, 3 Xanthari, and 3 representatives from neutral species. This case is about more than one boy's death, the prosecutor said. It is about the abuse of power, about seeing others as less than yourself, about killing without consequence. When Vexril was given a chance to speak, he rose slowly. I believed I was protecting my empire, he said. I was wrong. There is nothing else to say. The verdict came quickly. Guilty of murder and crimes against sentient beings. The sentence was life imprisonment on a neutral world, far from both human and Xanthari space. As guards led Vexril away, he paused beside Eleanor. If I had known who you were, he began. Eleanor cut him off. You would have what? Not killed an innocent boy? That's the problem, Admiral. It shouldn't matter who his mother was. He was a person. That should have been enough. After the trial, Eleanor declined all offers of political positions in the new federation. Instead, she established the Aaron Wright Foundation for Interspecies Understanding. The foundation provided funding for young scientists studying xenobiology, the very field Aaron had hoped to enter. 1 year after Aaron's death, a memorial garden opened on Helios 9 on the spot where he had died. At its center stood a statue of a young man holding a specimen collection kit, his face lifted toward the stars. Eleanor visited the garden often. On this day, the anniversary of Aaron's death, she placed fresh flowers at the base of the statue. As she stood there in silence, a small Xanthari child approached, accompanied by her parent. "Who is that?" the child asked, pointing at the statue. Eleanor looked down at the child. Just a few years ago, she might have seen only an enemy. Now she saw a curious young mind, not so different from her son. "That was my son," Eleanor said, gently. "His name was Aaron. He wanted to learn about all the living things in our galaxy." "Was he a scientist?" the child asked. "He wanted to be. He never got the chance." Eleanor touched the pendant she always wore, Aaron's school picture inside a small silver frame. "But because of him, many others will get that chance." As the sun set over Helios 9, casting purple shadows through the garden, Eleanor stood, with her hand on the statue of her son. She was no longer a general, no longer a weapon of war. She was simply a mother who had loved her son, a mother who had changed a galaxy to honor his memory. She looked up at the stars appearing in the darkening sky. "I miss you every day," she whispered. "But I think you'd be proud of what's happening now. People are talking to each other, learning from each other. It's a start." As Eleanor walked away from the garden, children of a dozen different species played together among the exotic plants. Human and Xanthari students collected samples side by side, comparing notes and sharing discoveries. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't finished. But it was a beginning. And for now, that was enough.